So the Washington Post, Nikki Javala has an article about possible GM candidates for the Washington Commanders. All right. We know they're going to be looking for a new head coach. They're also going to be looking for a new GM. My guess is the analytics guy that they hired,
Eugene Shen, I believe,
he's going to have a big say in who the next GM is going to be. But Nikki Javala came up with 12 names to watch in the Washington Post, and some of it makes a lot of sense. You can look at the top teams and who they have as the assistants. The first name is Adam Peters. He's the assistant GM with the 49ers. He's been there for 3 years as John Lynch's right-hand man. He's a former VP of player personnel. He was 8 years with the Broncos, then with the Niners, also with the Patriots. So he's a personnel guy.
Well, I would look at him and say, were you involved in the Trey Lance deal? And then he would say, yeah, I kind of spearheaded it, actually. And I would say, next.
All right, next.
Next person. And now,
so you're out on him.
Now also he found helped to find Brock Purdy. Like he was involved with that too. So find a diamond in the rough. So I guess you kind of make up for the botched Trey Lance selection by finding Purdy.
Did you see Cam Newton was taking a victory lap on Brock Purdy throwing the 4 interceptions?
I did not.
Because Cam Newton went viral because he said that Brock Purdy, and there were 2 other quarterbacks, I can't remember who said, they're really good quarterbacks. He said, but they're not game changers.
Right.
He said, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, game changers.
Probably Jalen Hurts.
I think he's basically said that Purdy, and it was 2 other really good quarterbacks. I think Dak Prescott might have been one.
Okay.
He said they're game managers, and a lot of people were upset. But there is some truth to that a guy like Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes, they just make plays that most quarterbacks don't.
Who was I will borrow EB's back padding machine for a second here. Let me take it off the chair.
Sure he didn't bring it to Nashville.
Put it right back here. Who for the last 2 years, this guy, patting his back, has been saying that Jimmy Garoppolo was protected by that San Francisco cocoon. The guy who's sitting where you usually sit, Jason Bishop, thought that he was going to go to the Raiders, lead them to the playoffs, that it would be the same Jimmy Garoppolo that we saw when he was healthy in San Francisco. That clearly did not happen. I think system quarterback, especially when it comes to Purdy, I don't really agree with the Dak Prescott calling him a game manager or a system guy.
I'm not positive it was Dak, but
I do believe that Purdy, if you took him and placed him on any other team outside of San Francisco, he would not look like the player that he looks like in San Fran.
Well, actually, Cam Newton called Purdy, Tua, Jared Goff, and Dak Prescott game managers.
Right.
And not difference makers.
Right. Yeah, I think Purdy.
All those guys have really great weapons.
Yeah.
So it's like you're knocking the guy for having great weapons. Well, a lot of the greatest quarterbacks in the history of the game had great weapons.
Sure.
Joe Montana had Jerry Rice. Troy Aikman had Michael Irvin.
Right.
Peyton Manning had Marvin Harrison.
Right.
Like you have to have good receivers. So it's almost like they're knocking Purdy because he has a lot. He's got McCaffrey out of the backfield. He's got Kittle at tight end.
He's got
Debo. Ayuk's not bad. Tua's got Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. But Dak Prescott's got CeeDee Lamb. So anyway, he was taking a victory lap, I think just with emojis on Brock Purdy with the 4 interceptions.
All right, back padding machine back on its original chair.
All right, so we can get back to the GMs and see if any of these jump out at you. The number 2 in Chicago is Ian Cunningham. He is the Bears' assistant GM. His pops was a sports agent. I don't know if that matters. He went to UVA, played on the offensive line, and since his playing days were over, personnel guy, was with the Ravens.
Hey, he learned the right
under
hand
Ozzie Newsome.
Of Ozzie. If you were a lieutenant of Ozzie Newsome and you were in that Baltimore front office, I'm going to give you a long look-see if I'm Josh Harris and whoever else is interviewing.
He was in college scouting with the Eagles in 2017, so he's been 15 years personnel guy. Ed Dodds, who's the Colts assistant GM. See, the problem when we have these conversations about the GMs, you've never heard of Ed Dodds.
Nobody knows these names.
Right.
I'm looking down this list of names. The only name that really jumps out at me, and it's because he was a former player, is Ray Agnew, who's the Lions assistant GM and has worked under Brad Holmes, who I believe is the current Lions GM. I only recognize him because he played in the league. He was a defensive tackle in the league for like a decade. I'm sure I know who Catherine Raish is from the Browns front office.
Right.
I
And you
think
go
she's
down the
only
list.
woman on this list.
Valdez is the world's biggest Ravens expert. Are you familiar with, let's see, it's on the list.
Yeah, Joe Ortiz.
Joe Ortiz. Are you a Joe Ortiz fan?
Give us the file on Joe Ortiz, Valdez. Yeah.
Oh, isn't he the director of the college scouting?
He's director
Player personnel.
Oh, personnel.
Yeah.
He'd be
He
silly high.
was the team's director of college scouting for 10 seasons.
Oh. See,
So you were right.
I don't know. I got silly following Joe Ortiz.
I helped the team land Joe Flacco.
I think it's a it's kind of like, what kind of team do you want to mirror the Commanders around? Like, honestly, if you kind
I'm
of
down with mirroring the Ravens.
Oh, yeah, I'm good with following the Ravens blueprint. Like, if you're Josh Harris, it's probably a good place to start.
If you want to cherry pick the Lions assistant GM and Ben Johnson,
Right.
I think that's not bad. Also, you got to think some teams are more aggressive than others. So like, the Ravens aren't that aggressive when it comes to seeking out trades or trading players like the Lions are, like the Eagles are. They're definitely more into player development than most franchises.
The Ravens guy makes some sense. So Joe Hortitz, the director of player personnel, obviously somebody who's been a talent evaluator. They credit him for the Joe Flacco pick back in 2008, but he overlapped with Shen, who is the new senior vice president for the Commanders, the analytics guy.
There's a connection there. Okay, that can make sense.
But that if he gets credit for the Flacco pick, I guess you could say. Do you know the story behind the Flacco pick?
I think you might have told us before, but please refresh the audience.
So there was a big debate between Flacco and I don't know who else the hot quarterback was in that draft.
Okay,
but they pounded the table for Flacco because the majority of the games are against the AFC North, and if you're going to play in January, it's going to be cold. So the biggest thing they did was they worked out their quarterbacks in the cold.
Okay,
because that's what they want.
These are conditions you're going to be playing in, right?
So that was the main reasoning for picking Flacco over whoever in the draft.
Looks like a good pick because I'm looking at the draft right now. So Flacco was picked in the first round. This wasn't a quarterback-heavy draft. I think he was the first quarterback selected, 18th. All right,
but that's
18th.
This is the type of thinking that's been lacking in the building.
The next two quarterbacks were Brian Brom and Chad Henne.
just that type of out of the box thinking isn't done in this office. Isn't done in Ashburn. At least that's what I think.
They're going to bring a fresh set of eyeballs to think like that.
They need somebody who thinks like that.
Right.
I feel like they're playing with an incomplete set right now, while a lot of the other GMs are playing chess and they're playing checkers.
Right.
I'm down with the Ravens guy.
Yeah, if Joe Ortiz is the guy, bring him in, especially if he has a connection with Shen. They've worked together. They're familiar with each other.
Now, would you be down with the Ravens guy being the GM, and then he brings along the Ravens defensive coordinator to be your head coach?
I wouldn't be. I know that
he's getting a lot of hype.
Mike McDonald.
I know that he's lauded widely.
He doesn't want a defensive guy.
I understand that he's respected. I would be okay with it as long as he has a progressive mind as far as he wants like a cutting-edge offensive coordinator. He's not going to mess with the offense. He'll oversee the defense. Maybe, give a side out of the offense here and there. As long as he's willing to let somebody else come in and just do the offense while he orchestrates the defense, I'd be okay with it. I don't think you're going to see a defensive-centric head coach coming in here following Ron Rivera, but I could be wrong.
By the way,
I have been wrong before. It has happened.
Just for the record, I missed Matt Ryan was the third pick in that draft. So Matt Ryan was the first quarterback. Then it was Flacco.
Okay.
And then the rest of them, they're all out. I mean, Chad Henne, Kevin O'Connell, who's a head coach, been a head coach in the league for a while. He was drafted. Brian Brom, I mentioned. Chad Henne. John Booty.
Yeah,
there were
pretty bad
quarterbacks.